Hey, thanks, Steph. That was an amazing match. Congratulations, Arsh, Nigel, and Hank. Good competition there. So, welcome back, everybody, to our episode 4 of SIAM in Action. I am Neha Jain. I am the curious SIAM enthusiast who asks all the questions I have about SIAM, and I hope some of that reflects your questions too. So, in today's episode, we will explore the strategic as well as the operational importance of service integration and management in building a sustainable operation and business for our customers. All right. So, when we hear sustainability in the business context, the immediate thought that runs to our head is green energy, carbon footprint, and probably a few more. But it is less obvious, yet equally important for us to also consider other elements of waste, inefficiency, resource drain. And talking about resource drain, in fact, I was reading a publication from University of Illinois and Urbana-Champaign that on an average, one of the famous hyperscalers data center consumes approximately 450,000 gallons of water per day. Imagine that. And with now AI coming in, the power of compute that's required, by 2027, we will withdraw up to 6.6 billion cubic meters of water annually to support AI. And to give you a context, that's half of UK's yearly water withdrawal. That's what we are talking about. And none of these are new facts. These are not discovered today, right? We have seen the industry shifting from their traditional ways of working into more reliability driven, intent based operations, automations, whether it's networking, business workflows, everywhere. So, as a whole ecosystem, we do recognize the importance of ethical choices that we need to make to be sustainable. And in today's episode, we have some of the brilliant experts joining us to talk about this topic, explore how can we all become more leaner, greener, resilient, and ensure that our businesses become more sustainable. And the guests that we have today are superb. So first we have Markus. Markus is joining us to explore sustainability. He's currently working as technology consultant for platforms and operational excellence in EY. And he brings an extensive global experience in IT service management and digital transformation. Important piece that I would like to highlight where, Markus, I really see you bringing in the real-time examples is your work that you have done being the SIAM consultant in HP and also being the group vice president in information systems for ABB. Those are really important pieces looking at the span of the scope that you have worked across. So thank you for joining us today, Markus.
Thanks for having me. Really, it's a pleasure to be here, being part of this conversation. I look forward to discussing what's truly at the center of what I care about in my professional life.
Thank you. And we have Paul Drayton. Paul is also highly experienced digital transformation professional. He is currently working as global large deals and consulting at Tata Communications. He has 25 years of experience in this field, and Paul has expertise in designing and delivering management solutions, including SIAM, including IT service governance, and he's actively exploring and developing and championing the sustainability and net zero governance. It's great to have you, Paul, on the discussion today.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here, part of this great discussion, and I look forward to a healthy, lively debate about sustainability.
Great thought. Thank you so much for joining us. So, while we were preparing for this episode, I think we have formed mature observations and thought process on dealing with sustainability with SIAM only in 3 areas, which is cost reduction, process optimization efficiencies, and IT productivity. Is there more to it?
Obviously, there's more to it. There's so much more to do. What you
Okay.
described is pretty much how we normally do business, how
Right.
we did it in the past. Every manager has a choice whether they want to focus on these three areas. I'll add a fourth one, fulfilling the legal sustainability obligations.
Mhm.
Yeah. Or
Let's
if they
frame
want to
that.
take a strategic approach, right? And if they do, SIAM comes into play.
Awesome. Paul, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely right. The way that SIAM is positioned, right, it's in that sweet spot between consumer, customer, and then underneath that you have your ecosystem of providers and partners. The role of SIAM and the service integrator is in that place that they can really help enable a customer's goals, a
Right.
customer's aspirations and strategies, and manage the providers underneath to help underpin and support those sustainability and decarbonization targets.
Great. All right. So, just to ensure our audience and us are on the same page, let's start from the basics. Let's talk about the word sustainability. And Marcus, if I can request you to perhaps help us understand and outline the dimensions of sustainability and SIAM coming together.
Sure. Yeah, it's an important question. Probably it's important to clarify for the audience the terms we're using here. Sustainability. Also, there will be a term called ESG, often referred to environmental social governance. They're frequently used,
Mhm.
often interchangeably. They represent distinct concepts while they're obviously very interrelated. So, sustainability itself, how can we say? It's about meeting the needs of the present, but without compromising what future generations actually also need and want. Yeah. So in a corporate context, that means balancing economic success, the normal
Yeah.
things how we measure success in social and environmental responsibility. So sustainability is a broad value-driven concept, a mindset that integrates the long-term thinking into the everyday decision-making. And I'm mentioning ESG also in this context because it's actually important when we want to understand sustainability and SIAM and how they're interconnected. ESG is, these are the three letters: E for environmental, how a company
Mhm.
performs preserving the environment; social, how it manages relationship with employees, suppliers, communities; and then the governance, how it actually governs itself, means the leadership, what they pay to the executives, the audits, the internal controls, and so on. Yeah. So all these criteria, ESG actually provides a framework. Yeah. So you can say sustainability is more about the why things are, and ESG about the how, the metrics, the mechanisms, how to track and manage progress towards the sustainability goals. And they are
Mhm.
both essential. Yeah. So now talking about SIAM, that's your question. How does now SIAM come into play?
Yeah.
And this is where things get really interesting. Let me say this. Sustainability in technology itself, especially AI, they present very powerful megatrends. And in the past, such trends often emerged after one in another. You'd see a wave of innovation, and once that settled, a new one will arise. But today, these trends all overlap. They accelerate each other, they create complex, fast moving environments. In both sustainability, AI, they are deeply transformative. So, sustainability asks companies to reassess their long term impact on the people and the planet. And AI, on the other hand, demands new approaches how we deal with data, decision making, risks. And that's exactly where SIAM, so service integration management, plays this very important role, in my opinion. It
Mhm.
offers a method, an operating model that helps organizations to integrate and govern these complex multi-supplier ecosystems. So that's crucial to me because when it comes to sustainability, there's a lot of talk, but what's actually the execution? There are real risks out there, as you said. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a lot of waste, carbon emissions, questionable labor practices. There's even a lot of greenwashing these days.
Mhm.
So, and these things occur not so much inside our own organization. They happen downstream in the supply network. And I think SIAM allows us to shine a light on this complexity and give us the tools and governance to drive more accountability, to get really an impact
Right.
in a credible and measurable way, to be honest.
Great. And you both spoke about sustainability being transformative. And there's so many facets within sustainability. Paul, if I can ask you to elaborate a bit more on how do you see SIAM inherently aligning with the agenda of sustainability, entire supply chain, and the facets that it comes with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was very privileged and lucky enough to present at Service North, give a bit of a plug there, last November on a SIAM sustainability toolbox, which was around some of the key components of how you'd possibly go around governing and just as Marcus says, kind of actually executing and implementing, the governance and the controls around how you may well need to track your ESG targets, or I'll throw another acronym in there as well, CSR as well, which is the corporate social responsibility, which is very similar to ESG. And again, and I think I mentioned it right at the front, right? You've got large global organizations and they're dealing with external factors and drivers like industry regulations and regional and global targets for emissions and decarbonisation. You're dealing with the wider social conscience. Yeah, people now, just in more general terms, are a lot more savvy when it comes to sourcing and wanting to buy and use products that they know to be green, that they know to be from an organization or a company that is actually taking to heart their own responsibilities for sourcing ethical and sustainable services, the whole circular economy, which is, again, a way of describing that business model of reusing and recycling services and energy. So again, SIAM is there as an enabler. Yeah. Companies will source multiple services and products from a variety of, be it big strategic global players to niche players to SaaS providers to startups. And SIAM is the framework and the governance, if used and constructed correctly, that will help customers and organizations deliver and underpin their own sustainability targets. So again, SIAM is incredibly key here. Getting on to the different scope, the different kind of emission scopes, scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. And I think a bit later on, I'll just kind of explain the real relevance of why the scope 3, which are the third party and supplier emissions, are something that SIAM can really help to measure and manage for a customer and a client.
Interesting how you see SIAM actually working with the organizations to enable their scope 3.
Sure.
A quick note to the audience, if you have any questions, and Hanks, thank you so much for your questions. If you have any other questions, please put them on the chat. And if you're enjoying the conversation so far, please let us know. Subscribe to the YouTube channel where you're watching it, if you're watching it on YouTube. Or in fact, you can also mark your credit by just putting one word which describes of what is your understanding of SIAM, and then hashtag it with SIAM in action. Just put that on the post. Okay, coming back to the discussion. So, Paul, you were talking about how we can work through the scope 3. You have also explored a lot and spoken a lot about green IT, net zero governance. Can we go a little deeper into helping us understand how SIAM governance can involve the net zero governance when they're working with the supplier chain?
Yeah, Neha, absolutely right. So there were 4 key components that I was kind of bringing into the SIAM sustainability toolbox when I spoke about this last year at Service North. And those 4 components, just to keep them very easily kind of in your head, are support, promote, report, and design. And they're all different, slightly different lenses of looking at how you would manage and govern, sustainability as services coming from an ecosystem and being delivered back into an organization. So I think key for me again is out of all of those, the support, promote, report, and design, the support part of this is obviously a people thing, and actually assigning proper green leadership within your SIAM organization, someone who can work with counterparts in the customer's organization that are looking at these topics and are governing these topics is really crucial. When I was working at Atos, we had a role called the Green Navigator. Now it can be the chief emissions officer, it can be the chief decarbonisation officer. But again, as part of that supporting, as long as there is some leadership to govern and to help and to basically take the funnel of requirements coming down from the wider customers organization, and then cascading them down into all the different ecosystem of providers underneath it to act as that supporting role, the single point of contact role, someone who can help, like I say, cascade and bring information from the top to the bottom into the ecosystem. I think it's absolutely crucial. And it's one of those key components.
That's interesting. Yeah, the way you described that, how the regulations, compliance, or in fact goals related to sustainability is percolated down to the single point of contact to entire supply chain. Why do you think, and Markus, if you can share your thought on why do you think the sustainability leader of the customer's organization would be interested in using SIAM, and what kind of value can the SIAM provide back to the owners of sustainability in customers' organization by not just governance, even going beyond that?
Yeah, good question. Because what I often see is a disconnect between the ambition that's set by the leadership and then what's actually happening on the ground. On top of that, sustainability, especially when you frame it narrowly in terms of ESG compliance, it's often parked somewhere in a department, in a staff function, making it real hard to get traction across the business. And this is where SIAM can help. First and foremost, it creates the governance and the accountability, and as well as the integration, which is the I in SIAM. The integration needed to embed the sustainability into the daily operations, not just the reporting. Think about typical indicators like how many male versus female executive does a company have. So you can obviously optimize these indicators by just adding another line in the hierarchy, because normally female leaders are more in the middle management, not on the top. Fortunately, that's the fact. So you can report this once a year, but what impact does it have on your daily operation? That's questionable. So there can be different better operational KPIs, such as, let's say, we take the best performers of a particular business unit and look at them, for example, and we do this at least quarterly, for example. Then it gets more operational, in my opinion. And SIAM enforces these common standards across all the providers, which helps ensure the consistent use of sustainability practice, embed the compliance, be it in SLAs, OLAs, however you want to name it, and prevent the greenwashing by uniform reporting requirements. So for me, SIAM, think about installing it like an integrator that actually coordinates all the different departments. So it's not about only the collection of relevant data like energy use, metrics, compliance. It's not only about the dashboards and reporting, it's really the governance structure, the boards and how they make the decisions. And, I think it's important. When we talk about sustainability, we often focus on the E, the environmental.
Right.
But to me, the S is also important. It's the social practices. you know, because SIAM is built around collaboration. It's the key when working across different departments and company cultures. And I think that's what we can also have. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you
Yeah.
think, would you rather work in a company that's only focused on maximizing profits or one that sees circularity as part of its core business strategy? I mean, the way
Yeah.
our company approaches sustainability has a big impact on how loyal the employees feel and how attractive the company is. You know, these days, ongoing talent shortage, company culture is more important than ever. So SIAM
Mhm.
clearly plays a role here. You want to become the kind of employer people want to work for.
That's interesting on how SIAM is not just talking about collecting the data and reporting it, but we are, and going back to Paul, the entire framework that you spoke about, support, promote, report, design, we work across all of these, becoming truly partner of the organization we are working with. And that's truly important for both the customer who is giving the SIAM contract and as well as the suppliers and the providers who are working with the SIAM team, right? So um,
Mm.
uh, where I would probably want to quickly drill back is the entire governance piece, and then we'll go away from reporting a bit. But Paul, if you can talk about how do we really achieve this with the providers? Do we bring in the net zero governance goals into the contract for the suppliers? How do we really bring in those sustainable and ethical sourcing standards into the contract? How does that actually happen?
Yeah, Neha, it's a really good question. It's a question you've got to be very careful with because you don't want to go the balance between promoting it as something that is just generally a good thing to do, you know, the wider context, rather than more draconian, here is a contract, you need to meet these targets. And the balance you have to set is really, it's quite challenging. However, to answer your question, Neha, there are decarbonisation level agreements. There is contract language and there are contract clauses and terms that you can use, and you can put this in. And this comes under the promote part of my four
Mhm.
topics. So in terms of really promoting sustainability, putting in the KPI, the legal KPIs that would that are auditable, that are measurable, that really, really promote that kind of behavior to your ecosystem providers is something that you can do. You'll make sure that you tailor these and you put these together so they are um, reasonable. They're underpinning the customer's own commitments and targets and
Yeah.
reporting that they have to maybe on a yearly basis, annual basis, they have to promote and submit their reports on their own targets and sustainability. It's certainly measurable in the carbon footprint
Mm-hmm.
reductions, the water consumption, whatever it may be, are really targeted. There's a threshold. You can really see progress, hopefully progress or not, as the case may be. And you can actually even, just like we do with SLAs, OLAs,
Yeah.
XLAs, you
Yeah.
provide penalties to promote their compliance. You can actually say there's an offset penalty to pay. I know at Atos they would actually bind in a carbon offset where they would pay to a charity or go and plant trees, for example. If a particular target wasn't met, they would do
Mm-hmm.
something that would actually then meet if you like, credit back some of the carbon that wasn't reduced and do it in a way that they would kind of offset it. So yeah, I mean, it can be done. And just one final point,
Yeah.
internally in an organization rather than externally with the DLAs, you can have carbon pricing. So your internal engineers, designers, application providers, they can build things, and they're actually promoted to build and design and use IT that has the lowest consumption of carbon. So you give everything points or scores so they can select from a portfolio of services, and you promote
Right.
internally as well to say, hey guys, build me a service that's as low carbon and consuming as possible. And you use the internal kind of carbon pricing, as it's called, so that your architects can design services that are more greener. So couple of
Brilliant.
things there.
Brilliant. So what I hear from you, Paul, is while we are working through the contracts, keep the KPIs agile. Some of these can be fixed, design KPIs. Some
Sure.
of these will evolve based on the performance, taking them step by step closer to the overall objective of the customer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely right. Absolutely right. It's a balancing act. Everything in SIAM is a little bit of a balancing act, right? So that's what the SIAM is there to do. So yeah.
Brilliant. One quick piece that I want to pick from your response is buying the carbon offsets. So we have heard of this pretty often happening. And if we go back to all the numbers that's been published against SDG, uh, while the consumers are ready to pay more for more sustainable products, the consumerism and the competitive edge from sustainability is increasing. But when we look at the numbers that needs to be met against the SDG goals or sustainability goals, by buying these carbon offsets, do you think this is just a number game or we are going to go beyond just
Yeah.
reporting based on these numbers and make a
Yeah.
true difference with sustainability?
Yeah, this is the big question, right? And there's a Marcus already spoke about greenwashing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's a lot in that question because this is where I have to get a little bit wider and more philosophical about us and our
Mhm.
planet and people in general, right? It becomes not a SIAM topic anymore. It
Yeah.
becomes, there has to be a driver for change, not because we all work in IT and service management, but the world is heating up. The world's as the environment is changing.
Mhm.
It's the targets that were set for the 1.5 heating global heating are, I think, sadly not going to be hit, and therefore when it gets to is this just compliance and numbers and just reporting, well, yeah, it is in one respect, but I think the much wider lens to look at this is it has to be more than that. It has to be that large corporate IT application AI providers have to actually put this on their agenda and be
Mhm.
the drivers. We're all sat here using this service, using our phones, we're using and consuming services that ultimately need power and energy and water. So it has to be bigger than more than just the reporting. And again, that's where the SIAM governance framework, the right people in the right places, the leadership, the help and the consultancy can really make a difference because don't forget your ecosystem has different levels of maturity in terms of ESG and CSR and sustainability. So
Right.
you need to help and nurture, right? Some of those providers that don't really have a great deal to they don't understand too much about how best to do things. So again, it's there. The SIAM is there to help to bring up to speed maybe the less mature kind of green organizations and use the best practice of those that are really good and spread it across the ecosystem, spread the good news. So yeah, no, we have to do this. It has to be something that we all take on board and really drive to change.
That's the intent. Marcus, what are your thoughts?
Um, this 1.5, this triggered some thinking because I'm not sure if people know. You might think that we're talking about heat and unpleasant conditions on the planet. Of course we do, but scientific fact, the reason why it's 1.5 and not 2.0 or 1.4 or something is because this is exactly the threshold where we see huge, large migrations.
Yeah.
And right now we can sustain things because people are fleeing from countries where we see war and stuff. But if we have whole countries in areas that are non-habitable anymore, we're dealing about different things. And I think that's important to understand why we're
Mhm.
setting these goals. They're based on scientific research and not based on someone's opinion.
Right. So net, we agree that these goals are being set, the targets are being set to make the difference. And we continuously keep on evolving as we go through those goals and targets. There's a specific question that I came in from Hank. Hank, thanks for asking this question. His question is, do you see organizations that's using SIAM also comply to ISO 14001, 14,001?
Yeah. So absolutely, it's a great question. And SIAM should be there as a provider and enabler for lots and
Mhm.
lots of these. I mean, so when it comes to kind of measuring and governing carbon footprint standards, you've got a whole hierarchy, right? You have your global, you have your Paris Agreement, yeah, the COP
Yeah,
21, the whole Paris Agreement, yeah, and the global protocol for greenhouse gases. Then you have more regional and national. Kind of like there's an EU corporate strategy, for example, for sustainability reporting, and then organizational, and then product specific, and then kind of project specific. So 14,001 sits in that organizational space, alongside, you know, ISO 20,000, 27,001 for security. So absolutely right. A SIAM organization is kind of twofold again. SIAM providers, big kind of
yeah,
consultancies or service management providers will aspire and more likely be kind of 14,001 compliant, 20,001, 27,001 compliant, but I guess you could argue more importantly, their customers that are buying SIAM services are
hmm,
already 14,001. And again, I spoke about the cascading of those down. So absolutely, SIAM is all over this, not just 14,001, but all of the global standards that may need to be policed and governed inside an ecosystem.
sure. Thank you so much. That's such a clear response.
Just, I
Yeah,
wanted to
go
add
ahead.
here that what I see is that there's such a regulative burden, especially here in Europe, that people are very focused on the obligation from a regulatory environment
Yeah,
and the obligations from a European regulation perspective, which obviously affects global economies. They focus on things like CSDDD, CSRD, and all these standards coming
yeah,
from the European Union. The ISO is important, and it's especially important when you actually try to implement things, yeah? Because it's embedding the environmental thinking into the core of how the business operates. But in focus is this European regulation thing right now
right,
in my environment. It could be different uh, based on where you're sitting on the planet.
right, right. Thank you so much. So there was another question in the panel from the audience. They're talking about, can you see providers integrating to improve organization sustainability, not just compliance and coordination? So I believe some of the responses we heard from Marcus and Paul do answer that. But if I can request you, Marcus, why don't you take an example and walk us through how sustainability actually delivered transformation for the business and not just tracking the reports?
Do you mean the example from my time at ABB that we talked about?
Yes, that would be wonderful. Yes.
All right. Well, basically, we shaped how the whole company operates. It started in IT, to be honest, and I hope I don't overdo it when I state that we actually opened the door for an entire new business operating models for the digital platform at that time. So the task was to look and make our supply chain more resilient. We had all these disruptions coming in geopolitically and especially in terms of sustainability risks. We had to do something because a key measurement is how fast you actually get information so you can act. So we implemented something called supply chain intelligence. The idea was to simplify how we identify and manage these risks that are lurking in the supply chain. Things like the labor practices,
Yeah.
the safety across and we had to implement it across different business units, which is, not every country, not every business unit is happy if the global headquarter comes in
Right.
and talks about these standards. So SIAM was basically the backbone of this initiatives, and I have to say, let me be very honest, we didn't mention the name SIAM when we were setting things up. It was rather my could say, secret source of knowledge on how to organize the network and, how we practiced when we were setting up the operating model. But matter of fact, we structured it according to SIAM. We had cross-supplier forum installed. We brought in the governance model that we can read in the body of knowledge. I think we really made it powerful. And there was even an AI component to it. So we worked with the predictive maintenance team. They had a good reputation. Swiss Railway, very exact, very precise on predictive maintenance. When a component in a train fails, they could predict it for a margin of hours. And for example, a factory in Asia, if they had a fraud incident, a serious violation, let's say child labor or something, making up an example, didn't happen, of course.
Yeah.
Our system would flag it, and it would flag it within minutes. And the alert would show up in the sustainability profile of that supplier. We had a web crawler, off-the-shelf software that tried to gain more evidence on how this is seen in public, because it was about protecting the brand.
Right.
Every company working for such a supplier would see it then. The ability to act fast with informed decision. I admit we had false positives in the beginning, but we were able to set the right threshold. So bottom line, we applied SIAM practices, and we were managing these processes across the suppliers. And it was a lot about monitoring event management across the suppliers to actually a business issue. And that wasn't about compliance. So
Right.
that's why I bring it up. It was about building a smarter, more ethical supply chain. And for a SIAM practitioner, to be honest, this kind of supplier scoring and risk rating, that's second nature. So,
Amazing. Yeah,
made
absolutely.
it.
That's a brilliant story there, Marcus, how SIAM framework became your secret superpower to transform a reactive organization to a proactive organization and providing good reputation to the organization, doing good to the environment, being good socially. That's a brilliant story. Thank you so much for sharing that. There's another question coming in. How do we ensure that all service providers comply with our sustainability standards?
Should I?
Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. I think, to be honest, again, the question it's the big question, right? But I think hopefully some of the concepts and some of the themes that we've kind of put forward today, because I don't think it's any one. I don't think anyone is any greater than the other. But certainly that combination of being able to promote the right behaviors and have green leadership and sustainability leadership,
Yep.
to have maybe the right kind of contracts in place and the right controls, contracts, or however you want to call them, principles around how to source and use and deploy IT and application services that are more sustainable, how to then report on it, which is the tool sets and everything that Markus was just describing, having that visibility, having something that you can actually set a threshold on, understand if you're hitting it or not. And then the fourth one, and then is just inherent green design in everything that you're doing as well, so that you're building out, you're applying a green lens on everything that you source, that you build, and that you deliver, so that you're just baking it in, And I think the combination of the people, the process, and the technology, having around this sustainability
Right.
toolbox is a way to go. I think it's a combination of all of those things that are inside SIAM.
Wow, such a brilliant conversation so far, right? Applying the green lens, doing support, promote, report, and design, using SIAM framework as a superpower to transform from reactive supply chain to proactive, focusing on ESG to in fact improve your competitive edge, your brand reputation, and giving back to the entire country, organization, whichever persona you belong to, right? Depending on that, we can develop so many goals iteratively and work with the entire supply chain to improve them. Brilliant conversation so far. So I know we have running short on time, if I can quickly now predict SIAM and sustainability's future in 2030, can I request both of you just give me 2 points quickly on how do you see SIAM and sustainability growing together in 2030? Paul.
Yeah, quickly for me then. So 2 points. They will grow together because the trend is that decarbonisation and sustainability is not a bolt-on. It's not something that was added
Mm-hmm.
just for the sake of it. It's actually, customers are demanding it more. The
Mm-hmm.
RFPs in the marketplace are now using more, they're weighting more scoring heavily on those aspects of a sustainable solution,
Yeah.
20 to 10 to 20%. So for me, it's not a bolt-on, it's real, and also the marketplace is demanding it. So that's my 2 quick points.
Brilliant. Markus?
Yeah, I'm going back to what I said about these megatrends. Let's think about sustainability, digitalization together.
Yeah.
When companies use SIAM, they're not just ticking boxes for compliance in the sense of this traditional ESG. They're actually open up new opportunities that go way beyond that. That's what I mean with the strategic approach. If you look at digital transformation, how it's evolving, there's
Mm-hmm.
such a lot of untapped potential, you know, and it's not, I'm not saying it's easy to monetize all of that, yeah, if you're looking for money only,
Yeah.
but apparently there are a lot of short-term thinkers among us, not so much people driven by long-term ambitions. However, if you think about this, how things are fast evolving, a lot of organizations are struggling to keep up, both in
Mm-hmm.
terms of structure and mindset. And that's where SIAM comes in. It gives you the tools and the practices to not catch up, but to build something that's actually of value.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference to me.
Brilliant thoughts. Thank you. Thank you so much, Markus. Thank you so much, Paul. This has been an incredible discussion, and there's so much to unpack, even talk more about it. And I'm sure the audience, request the audience to please continue building your expertise as you go through the entire session and keep popping in questions, even through our SIAM community, back to us so that we can build on these discussions. We can passionately and truly talk about how SIAM can meet the sustainability goals for an organization. How can we mature an organization, transform an organization with the magic wand of SIAM, take them towards sustainability? So, with all of that, thank you so much to the speakers. Thank you to the audience. Keep sharing this episode and more with your groups. And join us next time for SIAM in Action, where we will all discuss about SIAM and AI. And I promise you, this is not going to be the regular AI discussion. Until then, keep building your expertise. See you soon. Thank you so much.